Welcome. Another episode of Historic Hot Laps. We have got quite a bit to talk about today. Post Indy 500, post Coca-Cola 600, had a lot of open wheel events, all kinds of stuff to cover. So, that being said, not long after the first episode we released last week, we got some news of the fallout, penalties and whatnot between Stenhouse Jr., Stenhouse Sr., Kyle Busch, 47 team. You know, there was a little brawl post-race on the All-Star Wilkesboro race. This has become quite a hot topic. Not only has NASCAR decided this is good publicity for us, we're going to try to capitalize on that with the clips and the ad placement and everything else from those two drivers and the tension and the teams and everything that happened. They turn around, give multiple suspensions to different team members that were involved. 4 races for some, 8 races for others. On the 47 team, Stenhouse Sr. suspended for an unknown amount of time. They used the term indefinitely when they came out with the text on that. We'll see the fallout from that. And Stenhouse Jr. fined $75,000 for that. There's been a lot of reaction to the amount of the fine, and I think a lot of that is due to the fact that this was a lap, basically 1.5 event. Lap 1, as Kyle put it, you know, the temperature's not even in the water yet. And then Stenhouse can't leave. There's no tunnel there, right? So he's got to stay there. Not only did he say, like, these guys are going to hold my watch, but he sat around, stewed on it, stayed mad, which I get. All-Star race, a lot of money up for grabs. But I think the reason NASCAR went so high with that is because he had a couple hours of cool-off time and still was waiting at the hauler for Kyle Busch. So Chase Elliott came out with a great quote about it. You're going to find Ricky and then use it as promo material. What are we doing here, NASCAR? So there's a lot going on with that. Can't really touch on a whole lot more. We'll just kind of see. Obviously, no fines or anything for Kyle Busch. If there should be anything on that, maybe an on-track deal, but it's kind of one of those things, you know, it's part of what goes on the track, and it just ended up being a bad situation for Ricky and took his anger out. And $75,000 is pretty harsh, but at that point, you know, it is what it is. Let's talk about Carb Day. Some takeaways from Carb Day. Friday before the 500. A couple things going on there. Pretty relaxed atmosphere as usual. A lot of fan engagement, a lot of things going on. Basically, top 5 performers. You had Dixon, the most speed in traffic and on normal fuel loads. Castroneves was showing speed, 2nd overall. You had Pato, McLaren team doing a great job, 3rd overall. Herta, we all knew he was putting down the money on Carb Day. He was working a lot of traffic, trying a lot of things, a lot of strategery, if you will. 4th fastest of the day. Then the 5th fastest, oddly enough, rookie Tom Blomqvist, which was pretty awesome to see for him out of what he could do. Rookie in traffic, not experienced the ovals the way everybody else has. You know, the hot swaps in pits. You had Kyle Larson had some pit issues. You know, rookies come in. He's a one-off guy, new to the 500. Everything else, you've got new pit crews put together, and that happens a lot with all these one-off teams. You know, you have to find guys that are capable and can still be competitive, but you're not going to take your all-star pit guys from, say, Pato and put them on Larson's car. It's a makeup of a lot of different things. So overall, Carb Day, pretty awesome, relaxed. You know, you had concerts in the Snake Pit, had a lot of stuff going on, a lot of fan engagement. So in true fashion, that was pretty awesome to see from IndyCar putting that on the way they do every single year. All right, not only did we have Carb Day, everything that went along with Carb Day, we had the Pit Stop Challenge. We did a fun little bracket here at Historic Hot Laps, had a couple picks. My bracket did not do very well. Looking at it here, right out of the gate, you had Rossi and Newgarden. Obviously, anybody who's watched it knows how that ended. For all, I had Rossi going all the way to the end. He was not that guy for us on this one. Unfortunately, I had a lot of faith in him and the McLaren team, but Newgarden takes him out first round, moves on, go against his teammate Will Power. He knocks that out again, goes on to knock out Grosjean, go to the final. On the other side, Kirkwood and Palou moves on. So then you got teammates again, Dixon and Palou. Herta versus Rahal. Herta takes that one. Award versus Rosenquist. Award takes that one. Moving the bracket, teammates Palou, Dixon. Dixon takes that. Herta, Award. Award takes that, leaving your semis as Dixon and Award and Newgarden and Grosjean. Newgarden moves to the final round. Award moves to the final round. Newgarden takes the whole thing from round one. My pick was knocked out by Newgarden, and then Newgarden took it. We also had a second bracket looking at Dixon being the overall winner. So there was a lot of hope on that bracket on the other side of the tournament table here. But overall, our picks, we definitely did not have a good bracket overall. Not sure if anyone else plays the bracket game with the Pit Stop Challenge. It's kind of a last-minute deal for us. We saw it and we're like, hey, let's play it. So congrats to Newgarden. Again, the Penske team's on fire, everything they do. So congrats there to them on the Pit Stop Challenge. Something I'd like to start off with, I kind of want to make this a tradition as we go along, hopefully, for years to come on this show or whatever we find of this whole venture that we've got going on here. But there's a lot of hype around paint schemes on helmets, helmet liveries for the 500, one-off type deals. And I think it'd be awesome to do, let's talk our podium on helmets for, the 500. Third place, I'm going to give that one to Ericsson for his Riley's Children Foundation helmet. Super awesome looking helmet. Good cause, the Riley's Children Foundation. That helmet will be on auction. Its auction is live now, so you can bid to support the Children's Foundation there in Indianapolis. Real quick on that, let me find it here. helmetforriley.givesmart.com. So helmetforriley.givesmart.com. Supports a good cause. Throw your name in there. You could get a race-worn helmet from Ericsson. And that helmet saw a lot of TV coverage, unfortunately, based on everything he had going on throughout the weekend. Man, we'll cover more of that later. Second place, I'm going to say Rinus VeeKay for his ice cream lid. Super creative, tribute to the dairy farmers. Kind of a Ben & Jerry's type spin-off with VeeKay, some Indiana mixed in there. Very bright, very vibrant, super cool helmet to see. And then first place, I have to give it to Kyle Larson. The Brickyard honor through the center, the sides. If anybody hasn't seen that profile, look it up. It's a super sweet helmet. He threw the McLaren stuff in there. For a one-off, that was an incredibly awesome helmet. The thought that went into that was super cool. I don't know who does his helmet stuff. I'm sure I could look it up and figure it out, but kudos to you. That helmet, first place on our podium for best helmets for this year's 108th running Indy 500. Moving on, let's check out, let's just dive right into it. This is basically the Indy 500 recap episode overall. In the title, 1,100 miles, obviously. Coca-Cola 600, we'll cover that stuff too. Indy 500 going into the weekend. Everybody talking about the weather, talking about the rain, what's going to happen. Well, the inevitable happened. It's Indianapolis. It hasn't happened, a whole lot over the years. A full delay happened, several hours. Got to give kudos to Doug Bowles and the the Indianapolis Motor Speedway team, keeping people updated in the press. Everybody was updating their accounts of what was going on, what everybody was seeing as far as whether we're going to make it through the storms, anything like that. And then who would have thought later in the afternoon, get the race going. It was a perfect condition for racing. So right out of the gate, you started seeing a whole lot of things happening. Man, going back to Ericsson, Tom Blomqvist makes a rookie move, goes down on the curb, much like Ericsson did in practice to take out his good oval car. Blomqvist goes down, rookie mistake, gets loose on the curb, checks up, takes out Fittipaldi, takes out Ericsson. He just can't catch a break this year. For a guy who won it 2 years ago, it's just wild the amount of trouble he's been having. Looked like he had found some speed prior to that. Really was looking for him to try to make something good of it, but obviously getting taken out in the rookie mix up. Fittipaldi gets taken out. From there, Catherine Legg takes motor out. nothing you can do. Engine's expired. Super rough for that one-off team. The only female in the race. Was looking good. Had a few mistakes here and there, but the bravery in her qualifying lap when she rubbed turn 4 and kept her foot in it. I mean, we all know she was putting 100% focus into this year's 500. She kept herself out of trouble in the beginning, and then just nothing you could do when you lose an engine. Similar thing, Kiff and Simpson had power issues from the get-go. Tried to work through it. Didn't end up working out for him, so he's out. Linus Lundqvist, another rookie, takes it out in the wall. Another engine expires for Felix Rosenqvist. He's out. That one was rough to see too. That Meyer-Shank team, they are fast. They have good cars. Mike Shanks really got that team figured out. You know, their sole focus in Indy right now, which they are hopefully pushing back into the IMSA series, perhaps next year after. I've heard a lot of rumor on that, but we'll cover that later on down the road. But rough for Rosenqvist just to lose an engine when he's doing his thing. Herta was, man, that guy was a loose cannon out there, just making stuff happen, making moves, putting it where people usually don't put it, just doing everything he could to gain some position. Just one of those things, you know, it doesn't owe you anything at that track and loses it. He saved it for the most part, lost the nose. They go back to the shop, put it back out on track, you know, at least keep some points. He's still in the points fight. Try to at least finish and not get the DNF and get some points out of the day for his team, his sponsors, and himself. So it's good to see him back out there, but obviously when you're 17, 18 laps down, like, your day's done. There's not much you can do about it. He did make up a little bit of ground, I believe, but he was still, I don't even remember at this point how far back he was, but he was definitely as far back as you can be without being on the DNF list. Another kind of interesting situation, Ryan Hunter-Reay tries to make a pass on Dixon, cuts underneath. Dixon comes down, nowhere to go, goes down in the grass a little bit, more than he probably could have got away with even if he had a clear line going there. Maybe not, you know, the TK move. But it's kind of a situation, was that considered a blocking penalty for Dixon? Should he have been called on that? Did Hunter-Reay just underestimate it and run out of room? That is something that none of us can really figure out at the moment. I mean, everybody's got their own opinion. Obviously, it wasn't called on the track. Dixon wasn't penalized. So as far as race control goes and the guys that have all the angles of it, it was a racing event, and that's what happened. So sucks for RHR and that Cusack team. They, Dry Ryan Bolt with Cusack, they had a good qualifying effort. They had some good speed, you know, running top 10, top 12. Probably could have been pretty impressive overall as far as overall finish, but that move just didn't work out for him. The Andretti curse continued on Marco. He just got a little too high up in the marbles from the looks of things. Again, this track doesn't owe anybody anything. Everybody knows that going into it. Got out of the racing line just enough. It didn't look like it was even fully out of the line, but just enough to catch something. Gets loose, loses it, ends his day. Kyle Larson making a killing through the day. Gets a speeding penalty going into the pits, which he had talked about prior to the race. He was afraid of, you know, all these things you got to do, these adjustments, got to put speed overlay for your pit stops, everything else, but gets clocked going a little too hot coming into the pits, equals a drive-through penalty. Drive-through penalty on that track puts your day in a rough spot, no matter what. I know he's hurting on that deal. Overall, he had a good day still, you know, nothing to be ashamed about for a guy who's very, very unfamiliar with these cars to go in and do what he did. He probably would have easily been a top 10 contender, maybe even a top 5, had he not had that penalty, but these things happen in racing. Who else do we got? I guess the last real big thing of the day, as far as drama goes there before we get to the finish. Will Power, man, he had a hard hit trying to make stuff happen. Wrecks out in the marbles. Very similar to Marco's, but seemed like he had a lot more momentum and a lot less control when it took off on him. He was really throwing it in there and it just didn't stick, and he took himself out with that hard hit. That was a rough one to see. As far as overall actual racing goes, there was some crazy number, like 18 different leaders through this race. It makes it so exciting to watch. The restart battles with Stingray Robb and Connor Daly, like two guys. Obviously Daly's pretty experienced at the track. Stingray's never been that high up on the board in any race. But then the most coveted racing event in the world, and he's leading on the restart. Daly's battling him. That was so amazing to watch. We had a couple of those. Stingray Robb leading as many laps as he did was super impressive too. I believe he was the third highest laps led because he led through all those restarts and cautions. Granted, some of those were cautions. It is what it is, but he still defended in his Foyt machine, did what he could do. Pretty awesome to see from him. I'm sure he was stoked about it. Good for the team, good for the sponsors, good for him, right? Man, the last few laps of this race were incredible. And there's been a lot of debate. Obviously, spoiler alert, Newgarden wins. Second time, 2 years. It's been like 22 years since it's happened. Castroneves did it back in 2001, I believe. So it's been quite a while since you've had back-to-back winners. Not only that, he gets the Borg Warner prize for back-to-back wins, which was $400 and something thousand at this point, 440 something, I believe. He has a fire on those last few laps, and it looked very similar to last year in the restart. Pato makes the move to take the lead. Was it too soon? It's all up for people to discuss, right? I mean, it could be considered too soon, knowing how these cars are, how everybody's at in these chassis, what they have going on. It could have been a too soon situation. Very well could have been. However, if you get a chance on the last lap to lead the Indy 500 and you know you have your opening and you don't take it, don't have that opening in the next corner, you're in the same spot, right? So he put everything on the line for that. Congratulations to Newgarden, making that crazy move on the outside of 3, trying to get everything he can for it. You see so much emotion. So you get Newgarden's celebration, tears of joy, and then you go to Pato and you see the opposite version of that, a heartbreak. The whole team just hugging on him, patting him on the back. I mean, second place at the Indy 500 is nothing to slouch about. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But that's the race where second place doesn't matter. These guys got to win it. It's winning or nothing. Obviously, in reality, second place comes with a decent prize money, purse attached to it. You get points. Everything else is good. Nobody cares about that in the moment at that track. That's the most coveted track to win at, the most coveted racing event, the Memorial Day Classic. Everything about that race, these guys only see first place. They don't see second or third or any of the other podium. It's heartbreaking for him. So he put on a great effort, did amazing. But at the end, Newgarden, ultimate victory on that. A couple other things to mention. My boy Connor Daly, biggest mover award, started in 29th place, finished 10th. Top 10 out of 29th. Led for a while, held the top couple spots for a while. Overall, it just goes to show, you put him with a good group of people that'll listen to feedback, awesome things can happen from it. So congrats on that. I'm glad he had a good day. It was awesome to see that pink and white just rolling through there. Super cool. Last thing to really mention on that, everybody knew it kind of going in unless something crazy happened, but Kyle Larson, rookie of the year for the 500. He had quite a day sitting through the rain delay, getting the race done, doing a quick interview, hopping on a helicopter to catch a plane, to hop on another helicopter to land in Charlotte to try to get in to the Coca-Cola 600 car, which we'll cover here in just a minute. All right, we talked about everything leading up into the Indy 500, what Kyle Larson had going on. Let's talk about the Coca-Cola 600. It's not going to be a whole lot to talk about. Spoiler alert, race was rained out after the halfway point. There's been a lot of discussion on that, back and forth. Was it the right call? Was it not? Obviously, rain, lightning in the area, a lot of stuff. The biggest thing is spectator safety, driver safety, team safety. The safety word, that's the biggest thing for any of these teams to worry about, for any of these organizations, for the racetrack, everybody else. So you get past the halfway point, Larson shows up just in time. They red flagged for weather and then called it. So he did everything he could to get that at least as much of a double. He knew going into that day after the 500 where he was at time-wise. He knew he wasn't going to get a true double, but still racing 2 tracks in one day in 2 different states, 2 different organizations, open wheel versus stock car. The whole thing is pretty awesome, and he really tried. Obviously, Hendrick put in Allgaier to sub for Larson while he was doing his 500 run in Indianapolis, so he did a great job. We'll cover the Xfinity series here in a minute, but that he's highly skilled. Couldn't have probably been a better fit for someone to take care of the number 5 machine for him. There was a ton of hype going into this race because this is, extra stage, extra points, extra playoff points. You really would think, I don't know, that's where the debate comes, right? Like, you get past the halfway point, you could try to dry the track out. Apparently, from the people who were there, they're saying the track was just not going to dry out. It was just, there's too much humidity in the air. It was just sticking to the track. They kept working on the same corner over and over, couldn't get it dry. So even the crew chiefs were calling it. So it sounds like it was not going to be the coveted race that it's meant to be, right? But a little recap on that. Going into qualifying, Ty Gibbs ends up getting pole on Saturday for the Xfinity race and pole on Sunday for the Cup race. So back-to-back poles for Ty Gibbs. Obviously, Charlotte is where he can qualify at, whichever version of the car he's in. So that's pretty awesome to see. Stage 1 went off pretty smoothly for the most part. You had William Byron taking the first stage win, getting those points. That was his first stage win of the season, I believe, so that's pretty cool for him. Stage 2, poor Blaney. He's having a rash bad luck. Blaney cuts a wheel, brings out the caution, has to limp it back to the pits, becomes a whole thing for him. Obviously, that kind of situation on a 1.5 mile track will really ruin your day. Some interesting stuff in the middle of all that during these pit cycles. I guess there was quite an issue. Nemechek apparently backed up Buescher, that backs up into Hamlin. Hamlin gets pissed off on the radio, starts talking to his team about going over there and talking to him, and then makes an announcement. He said, "You hear that, number 17? You park in my box and I will put my bumper on your car." So he was basically saying, I will push you out of the way if I have to. So Denny, when he gets irate, is just great because he's such a composed individual 99% of the time. But I like hearing when he gets a little riled up. That's keeps him going. Like the old Hamlin days, he's been pretty calm lately. Looks like on that track, the top line had a bunch of speed. It seemed like most of the passing and the moves were coming off that top line. And then guys were attempting to throw it in there, late braking zones, that kind of thing. You had Burton losing it on his own, basically. Same thing with LaJoie. LaJoie saved it for the most part. Burton did what he could. But overall, the second stage was probably the most exciting as far as on-track action goes, and then obviously the pits situation. Stage 2 win goes to Christopher Bell. Then we start stage 3, keep things going, weather's rolling in. Larson shows up, red flag for the race, and overall Christopher Bell was in the lead when they called the race and became the race winner. Still, congrats to that team. That team's awesome. Number 20 team, keeping that wagon going the whole time. They've got a good crew over there. They've got a good team overall. So nothing to be ashamed of there for those guys. It's not really the Coca-Cola 600 at that point. I can't remember what it was, Coca-Cola 337 or somebody named it, but I can't remember the total laps done now. But congrats to Christopher Bell on that, and rough day for Larson, man. That's too bad to see. He was suited up, ready to go, ready to jump in and swap out. And it would have, had they resumed racing, it would have been a perfect time. Red flag, as soon as the cars go back out, start counting laps. I believe by the rule book, that's when he could swap out with Allgaier, hop in his car and go. So that would have been super cool to see. But while we're talking about Charlotte, let's talk about Xfinity. Overall, it was a pretty good race. Not as whole lot of on-track action. A little bit of drama between Austin Hill and Cole Custer. Austin Hill just driving like a madman. I don't know what stemmed the initial drama, but basically Austin Hill did the old door knock to Cole Custer on the inside line. Custer cuts a tire down, and as he's slow pacing in the high line trying to work his way down, Austin Hill just basically gives him the Kurt Busch on Stenhouse move and dumps him. So a lot of emotion in that. Not really sure where it all stems from other than previous races and previous stuff, but I think even Cole Custer was a little confused about why he's so mad about him when, maybe he just wanted that race line. It's hard to say with those guys, right? So stage 1 goes to Allgaier, stage 2 goes to Allgaier. Awesome performance. During stage 3, man, he was leading the race, slides up to the high line. We talked about how fast that high line was, but you get into some of those marble grooves. He just kind of ran himself out of room on that high line, wrecked out from the lead. That obviously ruins you the rest of your day. And Chase Elliott driving that number 17 Hendrick, he was ready to pounce, and he took over, ran it to the end. Chase Elliott gets the win on the Xfinity Series race in Charlotte. Moving over to Truck Series at Charlotte, honestly, pretty good race overall. Not a whole lot of craziness there. Just some good back and forth, little this, little that. Stage 1, Corey Heim. Stage 2, Corey Heim. Back-to-back stage wins. Thought he was going to go for a sweep. Kind of pit cycled out. Some things happened, and Nick Sanchez ended up taking over the top spot, being the first one across the line. Nick Sanchez gets the win. Second win of his career, I believe. The really cool part about that, after the fact, when they interviewed Chris Showalter, this would have been race number 700 for him and that Spire Motorsports team, and his experience level, race 700 as a crew chief, and they get the win, and it's just a very emotional thing. He had tears of joy. He was so excited. It was super cool. So if anybody hasn't seen that, go back, watch the 6-minute recap of the race and watch that last interview and check that out. It's super nice to see. So congrats to them, Spire Motorsports team, and everything they've got going on there. Moving on to some other race recaps. Let's talk about some of the other series we like to touch on here at the old historic hot laps. With the big Charlotte weekend and everything they had going on, ARCA was also there to run it. I've seen those ARCA guys, a little less experienced guys. Some of them are still very experienced, but some of the younger generation at those bigger tracks. Ultimately, Tanner Gray did what he does. He got the win, worked his way back up from the back of the field where he got a flat and defends on old tires. Tanner Gray, overall winner there. Super cool to see. Not unexpected by any means, That's a very skilled driver. Congrats to him on the ARCA 150 at Charlotte. Being that it was the Memorial Day weekend, Indy 500, everything going on, you have the Hoosier 100 at Indy Raceway Park. Not a whole lot to discuss there. Pretty decent turnout from what I saw. The Hoosier 100 is not really the Hoosier 100 anymore. But Indy Raceway Park, Swanson dominated the race, taking checkered flag. He's had multiple wins this season. His team is strong, his car is strong. He makes it look easy. So congrats to Swanson on that win. We also had the World of Outlaws at the Atomic in Ohio. Night 1, Outlaw Midgets feature, Ryan Timms, second win of the season. Night 2, Dykstra gets in trouble on the high line, barrels end over end for a bit. It was a pretty hairy crash. He ends up walking to the ambulance, but with assistance, was looking pretty rough, but never went to the hospital, did infield care, passed the test, refused the care to go to the hospital, just kept it going. So Outlaw Midgets upside down and end over end is pretty wild. So night 1, like I said, Ryan Timms gets that. Night 2 goes to Cannon McIntosh. It's his third win of the season, so congrats to both those drivers. Moving on to the sprint car features, night 1, David Gravel, once again, number 8 of the season, getting it done. Overall domination, especially now that Brad Sweet's running, the high limit series. So, but either way, David Gravel is an amazing driver. He has a pretty awesome YouTube channel. It's a bunch of kind of insider info too. So if you're into that kind of thing, check that out. I don't have his call sign on here right now, but it's David Gravel on YouTube. Night 2 sprint car feature goes to Sheldon Hodenschild. It's his 5th win of the season. He had a pretty dominating car. Took the shoulder a lot for a couple slides and really made it happen. So congrats to him on that. All those teams on the World of Outlaws, they're still putting in the work every couple times a week usually, getting things done. So pretty awesome to see. Moving into the future, upcoming weekend, we've got Indy cars at Detroit, the Grand Prix of Detroit. We'll see how that goes. It's an interesting track. It's kind of a weird thing to put that right after the excitement of the 500, but hopefully, we'll have a good race, see some stuff. Predictions on that one, I'm just some guy with a podcast, but I believe we're going to see a return pole position from Will Power. He's going to have that fire, had that wreck in Indy. That fire's in his gut to get some stuff done. He's a lot more focused this year with all the personal life stuff being a little more regulated. So I feel like he's going to get the P1 award on that one. My winning pick, I'm going to go with, let's call Alex Palou. What was he, 2 years ago won there? I think he can do it again. Or no, it was last year. Last year he won there. So he'll repeat 2023. I feel like he's going to treat it a lot like thermal. He's going to dominate, get a good lead. No one's going to touch him. But those are just my predictions there for the Grand Prix of Detroit for IndyCar. We've got NASCAR trucks at Worldwide Technology Raceway, Xfinity at Portland, and then obviously Cup Series will be with the Truck Series at Worldwide Technology Raceway. So kind of got quite a big gap for these race teams to fill, being so far apart, different tracks, different areas geographically. It's going to be a lot going on, a lot to follow. We'll try to keep you up to date with quick recaps on those on the next episode. And we're back. Let's talk about some history. Here we are in the back half of the episode. We like to touch on some history lessons, things like that. Stick to our name, Historic Hot Laps. The early days. We can start out. Let's talk about the AAA Club. The AAA Club, American Automobile Association. Same one you think about today when you think about calling AAA, just completely different entities at this point. AAA Contest Board was established March 4th, 1902. The very first chairman of the board was a gentleman by the name of A.R. Partington. They were put together to kind of sanction these events. It really started with the Vanderbilt Cups, which were held in Long Island. Prior to the AAA taking over, they kind of came in with an iron fist, if you will, was the ACA Club, the Automobile Club of America. They were sanctioning all the races prior to the AAA Club coming in with the Vanderbilt Cup. And it was kind of a show of power in a way, I guess, that at the time, there's only a couple of these things going on, right? Like sanctioned races are very, very few. There's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of automobiles on the road, period, nonetheless, to be racing them. So you had your two groups, your ACA and your AAA. The ACA had done a bunch of one-offs. They created what was known as the American Grand Prize, which was kind of a Grand Prix style track racing. That once the Vanderbilt Cup happened with AAA, that's when the feud really began between the two. So the AAA is formed, and they start successfully promoting all these sanctioned races. They had a lot more money in the bank. They had a lot more political power, things that they don't really mention in a lot of the history books, but the ACA just couldn't compete. As they're feuding, they decide, okay, we can't, there's enough pie we can both be involved, but let's figure out how to be involved in it. Originally, you've got all these one-off races with the ACA supporting them. You start to get more organized stuff with the AAA Contest Board coming in, starting in 1905, I believe they started the National Track Championship, which was the very first time a point system was used, as minimal as that was. And shout out 1905 national champion Barney Oldfield, American driver. But they're setting up a point system. They're doing all these things that are kind of innovative for the time. And the ACA, they just can't hang. They can't compete. What they decide to do is AAA Contest Board is now officially going to take over everything inside American soil for American races, and the ACA would be in charge of any foreign events held on American soil. So say the Grand Prix that was sanctioned by European groups, the ACA would oversee it as a sanctioning body for American soil, but you'd have non-American competition with Americans, or however the mix-up was. But the ACA, if it was an international event on American soil, the ACA would be in charge of it. If it was anything else, American series, American drivers, AAA Contest Board on American soil, AAA Contest Board would take care of that. So Vanderbilt Cup happens 1904. We talked about 1905, they come out with the National Track Championship point system. They've kind of got a championship title figured out. They've got it all. And this is what's crazy about it is you look at how long ago that was, 120 years ago, and that's still the basis of what we do today. You still run on a point system, national championships in so many different series, right? No matter what it is, you still have a ton of options, but it's still run on a point system that they started in 1905. Now they vary, they've changed over time. But the core thing is, hey, each race is in how you finish is going to be based on these points. From there, over the course of the season, that'll be your championship leaderboard. and whoever has the most points in the end wins. So aside from years ago, NASCAR going to the playoff style bracket, prior to that they were on a points series championship, going to the playoff bracket. That's the only variation that's changed in all these years. 1906, 1915, they kind of took a break. There was sanctioned races, but the league was struggling. You had obviously European conflicts, everything else going on. It was not a time for a lot of successful racing to be going on. Very limited crowds. Obviously, we're talking World War I, starts stirring up the early prior years of that. You had a lot going on. There was quite a lull there. Kind of a neat thing with the AAA, when they took over and made this national event, the main sanctioning body, they had the manufacturers come to them. They created their own group called the MCA, the Manufacturing Contest Association, and they merged to start a program that would test what would be stock configuration cars from manufacturers to compete in these endurance type races on these tracks. It would promote their vehicles to the general public, show reliability, show capability, all these things. So these early days, I don't think of a better way you can get promo for, hey, buy our vehicle. Here we are racing this. And what that brought in was a true separation from the European market. Once the MCA made the deal with the AAA on stock configurations, what they called sporting cars, that banned any European imports from competing in these events, which at the time you had, other manufacturers in Europe trying to do the same thing and try to be the best in the world, if you will. So the stock configurations worked for a bit, but obviously that's kind of boring, right? So at some point during this time, the crowds get tired of it. It loses that luster, the sports car feel. They wanted the engines to rumble again. They wanted non-stock configurations. They wanted true race cars. So in 1916, AAA decided public knows best, and they started importing parts and suspension pieces again, picking up speeds, making racing more exciting. Obviously, World War I, you have a break from 1917 to 1919. Everything's disbanded, on hold. You've got the war effort. A lot more than we need to cover on this, but for those 3 years, there was not a lot going on. So then we get to 1920, and we bring in a new set of rules to go with the National League Championship sanctioned racing. That was not a great title, but that's what they called it. Became more of a spec in line with what they were doing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You come out of World War I, 1920, you get a new rule book, and that you have to fall within the specs that we have required for the Memorial Day Classic, also known as the Indianapolis 500 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And that's basically how it runs up until World War II. You stick with the same specs, the same, we got to fall in line with these rules, everything else. You get World War II, another lull in the racing community, obviously the war effort again. What a crazy time. Not a lot going on for that. And then you get to 1946. World War II, people are rebuilding. It's over. Lives are starting to come out of that cloud of that World War. The AAA reinstated the championship series on the Indy rulebook and ran it successfully like that through 1955. Post 1955, the AAA pulled itself entirely out of racing. A lot of this was due to cars were getting faster. Safety wasn't keeping up with everything they had going on track. You had a lot of wrecks. You had a lot of darkness in the sport with all the deaths that were happening. We'll cover a lot more of those on future episodes, but 1955, that they're no longer going to be a sanctioning body and promote the dangerous sport of auto racing. And I get it from their standpoint. They were the only ones really doing it. A lot of light. At this point, the freedom of the press is growing. It's not a good look when you have guys dying on the track and everything else. So, however, from that leads us into a way more exciting time for me to talk about, and we'll cover it further on future episodes. But 1955, the AAA ceases to exist in racing. They just become an automobile club again. From there, we see one of the greatest sanctioning bodies that we still know today, that combines the Indianapolis Motor Speedway with a bunch of race promoters from the Midwest, and they form the United States Auto Club, also known as USAC. We've covered USAC races in these episodes already. Just the fact that there was a love of racing, even though there was the danger, there was a love. Everybody knew the Memorial Day Classic, what was coming from that. They said, you know what, we don't need these guys, we'll create our own league. We're already running under the same specs, so that part was probably pretty nice and easy for them, and we're just going to get it done. USAC is created, and it took a lot of people, and we'll cover a lot more of that on next week's episode. I'd like to dive way more into the USAC history, cover some of the names that came out of that, and there's a lot of successful names in racing that came out of that side of things. So that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate the support. Again, hit us back with feedback if you have anything you want to address. historichotlapse@gmail.com. If you have anything you want to discuss, anything you want me to bring to the show, anything we can do to reach out, keep this family of motorsports alive. It's a wild time right now. There's a lot going on, a lot of innovation, a lot of advancements. We've got so much to talk about, so we'll just keep it going. And thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to follow us at Historic Hot Laps on X and all your other social platforms for the latest updates and sneak peeks into upcoming episodes. You can reach out to us directly at historichotlapse@gmail.com. Send us your feedback, questions, comments, opinions, and additional subject matter you'd like us to cover. Thanks for tuning in.